some of the rhetoric. This concerns me. We've talked in this program before about the coarse rhetoric in America, and because, in part, yesterday was the anniversary of Tim McVeigh's bombing of the McMurrah Federal Building, or the McMurrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, and the anniversary of Waco, and everybody points to, but I think in modern, I think McVeigh, as Rachel Maddow in her documentary last night on MSNBC just brilliantly pointed out, it had nothing to do with the shot heard around the world. This had to do with Waco. This had to do with this increasing anger and paranoia on the part of the American right. The anger and paranoia that you hear that just right across the board is Sarah Palin, saying, don't retreat, reload. Don't retreat, reload. And then you get John McCain saying, oh, that's fine with me.
She has used some pretty incendiary language. He tweeted in response to the healthcare vote, common sense, conservatives and lovers of America, don't retreat, instead reload. She also posted a map highlighting weak Democratic districts that conservatives should target with a crosshair symbol.
Please, to say that there's a targeted district or that we reload or go back into the fight again, please.
Well, those are not my words, those are her words.
Those are fine.
Those are just fine. The reporter, by the way, Ann Curry, in that clip, when a crazy guy flies a plane into the IRS building down in Texas, we get a member of the House of Representatives coming out and saying,
it's sad that the incident happened down in Texas, but by the same token, the IRS is an agency that's unnecessary, and when the day comes that is over and we have abolished the IRS, it'll be a happy day for all Americans.
That was Congressman Steve King. I mean, this is, and then, of course, on radio talk show hosts, Michael Savage, for example, talking, in this case, about a woman in a burqa, right?
When I see a woman walking around with a burqa, I see a Nazi. That's what I see. How do you like that? A hateful Nazi who would like to cut your throat and kill your children. Don't give me this crap that they're doing it out of a sacred ritual or rite. It's not required by the Quran that a woman walk around in the 7th century drape. She's doing it to spit in your face. She's saying, you white moron, I'm going to kill you if I can. That's how I see it. What do you want me to do, mince words with you? I'm not going to mince words. We're too far gone in this country.
Yeah, and so there's this genuine hysteria on the right that even gets to the, kill them kind of rhetoric.
It's a bloodthirsty religion that's practiced over there by a bunch of throwbacks, and we're to kill them.
We're to kill them. Yeah, we're going to kill them. Well, this Dick Morris. This is a quote from Dick Morris, the guy who got busted for, with the prostitute sucking his toes, or vice versa, I guess it was, and was fired as a result of that by Bill Clinton, and so has become, of course, a Fox News commentator. And he said, quote, those crazies in Montana who say we're going to kill ATF agents because the UN's going to take over, well, they're beginning to have a case. Kill ATF agents? This is Dick Morris. G. Gordon Liddy famously, some years ago went off on here's how to kill an ATF agent. But, this is, far more modern. We're going to have a revolution in this country, Michael Savage. John Stossel says that hanging above his sofa, he has Barney Frank, the only openly gay member of the House of Representatives, hanging in effigy. John Stossel, Fox News commentator. Glenn Beck saying, to the day I die, I'm going to be a progressive hunter, comparing himself to Israeli Nazi hunters. He says he speaks for 1/3 of the nation. This is Glenn Beck. You will have to shoot me in the forehead before you take away my gun. And before I acquiesce and become silent, he says there's a coup going on. There is a stealing of America. And then he says, the average American, he pours gasoline on a so-called average American, a stunt guy on his set, and then says, President Obama, why don't you just set us on fire? Milton Mayer wrote about this in a book called They Thought They Were Free. Milton Mayer was a reporter from Chicago back in the 1930s and 40s. And after World War II, he went over to Germany and he interviewed 10 good Germans, average Germans, people who were not involved in the atrocities, people who, the good Germans is in quotes, of course, people who were not part of the Nazi movement One was a college professor, one was a baker, one was a car mechanic. I mean, just people who tried to have normal lives through the Nazi era. And he actually came to like these 10 Nazis. They were all, not everybody had to join the Nazi party, but pretty much by the end, everybody had to if they wanted to keep a job. All of these guys were Nazis, even though they didn't participate with the army. And so here's his commentary about this. He's interviewing from his book, They Thought They Were Free. This is, by the way, one of my BuzzFlash books of the month. You can find it over at buzzflash.com or anywhere else. I mean, it's been out for, 34, well, probably more than 40 years, but it's still in print. And this college professor that he interviewed said, what happened here, and he's talking about in Germany in the 30s, what happened here was the gradual habituation of the people, little by little, to being governed by surprise, to receiving decisions deliberated in secret, to believing the situation was so complicated that the government had to act on information which the people could not understand, and so dangerous that even if the people could understand it, it could not be released because of national security. Another fellow that he interviewed said in his book, this separation of government from people, this widening of the gap took place so gradually and so insensibly, each step disguised, perhaps not even intentionally, as a temporary emergency measure or associated with true patriotic allegiance or with real social purposes. And all the crises and reforms, real reforms too, so occupied the people that they did not see the slow motion underneath of the whole process of government growing remoter and remoter. Now, the experience of actually living through that country, living through that process, was something that Mayer described as, he says, to live in this process is absolutely not to be able to notice it. This is the college professor that he interviewed. He says, please try to believe me, unless one has a much greater degree of political awareness, acuity than most of us ever had occasion to develop. I mean, when you have the son of the former president of the United States going on national radio, being paid to call for the murder of Americans. For example, Michael Reagan.
There is a group that's sending letters to our troops in Iraq and DVDs claiming 9/11 was an inside job.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that they should rethink why they're fighting. They ought to take these, excuse me, folks, I'm going to say this. We ought to find the people who are doing this, take them out, and shoot them. Really. Just find the people who are sending those letters to our troops to demoralize our troops and do what they're doing. You take them out. They are traitors to this country, and shoot them.
What happened to due process?
You have a problem with that? Deal with it.
Yeah, it's called the Fifth
But
Amendment,
anybody
Sixth
who
Amendment,
would do
Seventh
that
Amendment.
doesn't deserve to live. You shoot them. You call them traitors. That's what they are. And you shoot them dead. I'll pay for the bullet.
So Michael Reagan is going to pay for the bullet if you want to talk about 9/11, particularly to somebody in our armed forces. Glenn Beck is afraid of our government.
We are a country that is headed towards socialism, totalitarianism, beyond your wildest imagination. I have to tell you, I'm doing a story tonight that I wanted to debunk these FEMA camps. I'm tired of hearing. You know about them?
Sure.
I'm tired of hearing. I wanted to debunk them. Well, we've now for several days done research on them. I can't debunk them. And we're going to carry the story tonight.
I don't know anything about them. So
it is our government. If you
away.
trust our government, it's fine. If you have any kind of fear that we might be headed towards a totalitarian state, look out, buckle up. There's something going on in our country that is ain't good.
Yeah, where were these guys when Bush was actually moving us in the direction of a totalitarian state? I mean, it's just incredible.
They're going to put the government in charge of private payrolls. They're going to move to nationalize our auto industry. And here's the one key word, using the word crisis to obtain the unprecedented power needed to make it all happen. Our government is not marching down the road towards communism or socialism. I was convinced for a long time we were headed towards socialism, that they were marching us to a brand of socialism we haven't seen for a while, maybe except in France, but now I have to tell you that they're not marching us that direction. They're marching us to a brand of non-violent fascism. Or to put it another way, They're marching us towards 1984. Big Brother.
Yeah, well, if there is a 1984 or a Big Brother out there, I think Glenn Beck qualifies. You know, in the conversation that Milton Mayer had with Germans after World War II, he talked about how these kinds of movements, and keep in mind the fascist movement, the Nazi movement, started as in the beer halls. It started as a populist movement. He says Pastor Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me. Now this was the college professor that he interviewed about how could he have kept silent during this time. He says, Pastor Niemöller spoke for the thousands and thousands of men like me when he spoke too modestly of himself and said that when the Nazis attacked the communists, he was a little uneasy, but after all, he was not a communist, and so he did nothing. And then they attacked the socialists. He was a little uneasier, but he was not a socialist, and he did nothing. Then the schools, the press, the Jews, and so on. And he was always uneasier, and still he did nothing. But then they attacked the church, and he was a churchman, and he did something. But then it was too late. Yes, I said, writes Mayer, and as Mayer says, yes, continue on. You see, my colleague went on, one doesn't see exactly where or how to move. Believe me, this is true. Each act, each occasion is worse than the last, but only a little worse. You wait for the next and the next. You wait for the one great shocking occasion, thinking that others, when such a shock comes, will join with you in resisting somehow. You don't want to act. You don't want to talk alone. You don't want to go out of your way to make trouble. Why not? Well, you're not in the habit of doing that. And it's not just fear of standing alone that restrains you. It is also genuine uncertainty. Uncertainty is an important factor. And instead of decreasing as time goes on, it grows. Outside in the streets, in the general community, everyone's happy. One hears no protest, and certainly none sees none. You know, in France or Italy, there'd be slogans painted on the walls and fences. In Germany, outside the great cities, maybe, but not even this. In the university community, in your own community, you speak privately to your colleagues, some of whom certainly feel as you do. And they say, oh, it's not so bad. You're seeing things. You're an alarmist. And you are an alarmist. You're saying that this must lead to this, and you can't prove it. These are the beginnings, yes, but how do you know for sure when you don't know the end? And how do you know or even surmise the end? On the one hand, your enemies, the law, the regime, the party, the beer hall putsch, they intimidate you. On the other, your colleagues poo-hoo you as pessimistic or even neurotic. But the one great shocking occasion where tens or hundreds of thousands will join you never comes. That's the difficulty. If the last and this is this former good German. He says, if the last and worst act of the whole regime had come immediately after the first and smallest, thousands, millions would have been on the streets. But of course, that isn't the way it happens. In between come all the little steps. From step B to step C. And if you didn't complain about step B, why should you at step C? And so on to step D. And then one day, too late, your principles, if you were ever sensible of them, all rush in upon you. And the burden of self-deception has grown so too heavy. And some minor incident, in my case, my little boy, hardly more than a baby, saying, Jew, swine, collapses it all at once. And you see that everything has changed, and changed completely under your nose. The world you live in, your nation, your people, it's not the world you were in at all. The forms are all there, all untouched, all reassuring. The houses, the shops, the jobs, the meal times, the visits, the concerts, the cinema, the holidays. But the spirit, which you never noticed because you made the lifelong mistake of identifying it with the forms. The spirit is changed, and now you live in a world of hate and fear, and the people who hate and fear do not even know it themselves. When everyone is transformed, no one is transformed, and now you live in a nation which rules without responsibility even to God.